LEGO Builder's Journey is a game that I did not expect I would enjoy anywhere near as much as I did. To be perfectly honest, it was an impulse buy. I came across it on Steam, saw that it was on sale, and it had fantastic ratings to boot, so I said screw it, let's give it a shot, and I'm really glad I did. The game is really simple. It's effectively a straightforward puzzle game where you use different LEGO pieces to navigate levels as a small child trying to reconnect with their father, who is overworked and as a result struggles to connect with his son. Which is also why this game is known for its secondary title, America Simulator. There's no dialogue, there's only the soothing soundtrack and the ray-traced LEGO pieces. And my first concern with a game like this would be that it would grow boring and extremely repetitive before it would grow interesting and engaging. After all, there isn't any unique intellectual property like Harry Potter or Star Wars that's grounding you to the game to begin with, like with most other LEGO games. And the story that is here can only be communicated with small movements conducted by LEGO pieces that have been stuck together to look slightly phallic. Now, it shouldn't take you long to realize that that's not an easy task. It really isn't easy to make somebody feel something for plastic. I mean, hell, Hollywood tries every single time that they put Mickey Rourke in a movie. But somehow they managed it. This game is short, I grant you that, but they're able to tell a pretty moving story about a father and a son connecting over something as simple as travel and problem solving. And I can't believe I'm about to say this, but there are moments in here that are legitimately adorable and even heartbreaking. But let me preface this by saying that you need to meet the game halfway in order to have a decent experience. There are some games that you can play with an episode of South Park pulled up on the side and that you can occasionally check your phone while messing with, but if you want to have a good experience, you should not do that in LEGO Builder's Journey. The game is short, only 2 hours or so do yourself a favor and block out a couple of hours on a Saturday night and just play through it. No other music, no distractions, just let the game do what it was designed to do and you will have a great time. Now, because this is a puzzle game, it's pretty much impossible to have any sort of meaningful discussion about it without showing the puzzles contained therein. And so consider this the end of the spoiler-free section of the video. If what you've seen so far looks cute and interesting, and if you're a fan of these adorable little stories, pause the video and go pick it up on Steam for 10 to 15 bucks. And then come back to this video after you've finished it. I'll be waiting. And with that said, I want to get into some specific details about the game, what it does well, what it does poorly. But first, a quick thank you to the sponsor of this video, Skillshare. Skillshare is the online learning community for every type of learner. Whether you want to improve your video editing, Photoshop skills, or learn how to paint, Skillshare has lessons taught by industry professionals to help you achieve your goals. I've spoken about it before, but I struggle with time management and work efficiency, so going out on a limb, I looked for these classes on productivity, and sure enough, there was this course taught by Thomas Frank on productivity for creatives specifically. It has everything from lectures to creativity boosting drills, and it works. And right now, Skillshare has a deal where they will give the first 1,000 people who click on the link in the description box a free 1-month trial with unlimited access to thousands of inspiring classes that you can use to hone your craft or learn a new one. Check them out at the link below. Okay, so there's a few basic elements to this game's design. There's the story, the puzzles themselves, and the music. Each of these works very well together. The story is communicated using simple yet beautiful graphics paired with the music that sets the tone and the emotion. The gameplay is structured very well and is made all the more enjoyable with the calming music that puts your mind in a good space and the graphics which are satisfying to watch. Furthermore, they can even communicate to the player how you should go about solving certain puzzles by way of the relationship between the father and son. The father can do something, effectively teaching the player and the son what to do, and then you can use those taught skills to progress through the puzzle. It's not hand-holding, it's much more subtle than that, and it's really well done. Now, the gameplay itself is really straightforward, with only a few basic inputs. The characters move using simple base plates that can be set on top of other LEGO pieces. They have to be within an arbitrary range of the base plate that the character is already standing on in order to be placed and to have the character move between them, but you get a pretty good feel for it fairly quickly, and it never really felt unfair. In addition to moving the base plates around, you can also pick up other LEGO pieces and build different structures, bridges, routes, and paths paths for the base plates to go on that the characters can navigate. Later on in the game, you'll be tasked with building pads for skateboards that have to be constructed in a smooth and meandering way, or even solving more complicated puzzles where you have to use pieces to manipulate certain parts of different machines into behaving in different ways. But even with that, there's not a lot of variety here. After all, it is a Lego game. There's only so much you can do with Lego pieces. But what is here is simple and fleshed out by the end of the game. But before we go further, allow me to be very clear. This is not a Lego sandbox. You will not be building huge structures with endless pieces at your disposal. You're going to be building very small, simple structures that serve one purpose and one purpose alone, and that is to get the player character from one point to another. This is done with very small stages that take the form of a Lego miniature. These are very similar to different miniature sets that they've been selling to adults for the last few years. And each one of these miniatures makes up one singular level that you complete, and then you move on to the next one. Now, there are other Lego games that they've released that provide that sandbox experience, but this is not that game. In fact, much of this game is on pretty tight tracks. You need to do what the designers meant for you to do in order to progress. There really just isn't much room for creative freedom here, which I understand some people will have a problem with considering it's a Lego game. That's kind of the point of Legos, but I don't actually see it that way. In my mind, it's a puzzle game. And for that distinction to have any meaning whatsoever, there must be solutions to that puzzle. And since puzzles need to have one or only a few solutions in order to qualify as a puzzle, freedom must be limited. After all, if a puzzle has endless solutions, is it really a puzzle? Or is it just a toy? Now, part of all of this is the game's approach towards letting the player fail with regards to these puzzles. The designers really weren't afraid of letting the player sit on a puzzle for 5 to 10 minutes trying to solve it without any assistance at all. In fact, there really isn't any sort of assistance, heads-up display, or tutorials after the first few minutes of the game that prompt the player with basic controls, such as using the left mouse button in order to select a piece and so on. But even the tutorial just presents the player with a few pieces on a basic plane that they should stack up only to be torn down by the waves shortly after. Furthermore, later on in the game, the puzzles shift from being challenging in a creative way to being challenging in a more abstract way. It's hard to describe, but the simplest way I can put it is that early in the game, you're solving puzzles that have a clear beginning and end. Later in the game, however, you're solving much more abstract puzzles that don't have a clear goal presented to the player. For instance, this early puzzle is very clear. You need to get from point A to point B, and you're going to do this by placing pieces and building a connection between them. But later in the game, we can look at a puzzle such as this, where you have to manipulate this machine in order to produce the right series of pieces in order to progress. The player has to come up with the idea, in this case, of using the flag on this guide rail in order to halt the movement of the machine. Or this puzzle, where the last piece of the puzzle that you need is to use the character's hat as the last piece, something I think will take a lot of people a fair amount of time to realize. I know it took me longer than I'd care to admit. And there's other puzzles where you have to control your own light source using these light bricks, which, especially considering the ray traced lighting engine if you're playing on compatible hardware, really looks good. But the point is, each of these endgame puzzles requires much more abstract thought than the earlier puzzles. In other words, you have to think outside the box. You have to decide that this machine is operating in a way that you don't want it to. And then you have to look for pieces that will alter the performance of the machine and transform it into a position where it's doing what you want it to. Or like I said, using the character's hat as the one last piece that you need. You have to think creatively in order to solve this. But when you compare this to the puzzles using the skateboard, for instance, these earlier puzzles come off as very simple, almost overtly basic. I get it, you're trying to train the player and work them up to the more complicated stuff, but some of this is just trivial. Like here, you're trying to get from point A to point B. You build a route using these pieces, and once it's complete, the character rides on the skateboard along the path that you just laid out. Or these puzzles with your robot friend, where you have to build bridges across water and gaps using pieces that replicate every time they're stacked. These puzzles aren't difficult, they're just tedious. I don't think anybody's going to get stuck on a puzzle like this because the pieces will effectively self-duplicate endlessly. After all, the only way that a game like this creates a significant amount of challenge is if pieces are limited and there's only one or a few solutions. The moment we get to the point where there are endless solutions and it's only a matter of time before the player gets enough pieces to fill up the entire platform, the puzzles cease to be puzzles and they just become busy work. And this is my main criticism of LEGO Builders Journey. There are some good puzzles, the music is fantastic, the graphics look great, and the story that they are able to communicate is actually really touching. But there are many instances where I feel as though the levels I was being presented with were just there to pad gameplay time, which is already on the low side. In fact, after looking through all of the levels that you go through over the course of the game, I can confidently say that around 10% of them are just busy work filler. Should they be cut entirely? Well, considering the length of the game, I don't think so. If there was a lot of content elsewhere, then maybe they should be cut, but the game needs content. And in my opinion, even if some of it isn't as engaging as the rest and just serves as a break between headache-inducing puzzles that are actually challenging, still something. But even with this tedium present, the game doesn't feel as though it overstays its welcome, which I think is the most important thing to remember here. The story clips along at a decent pace, and your robot friend who assists you through much of the campaign is a welcome addition. And speaking of the story, it's very simple, but effective. When the game starts, you're on a hiking or camping trip with your father. It's beautiful and a good bonding experience. The tone is mellow and the graphics and music reflect this. Once you return home, you begin building a castle with some basic pieces. You place a piece and then your father places a piece, but soon after, and right before the castle's completion, he's called away to work. His job is extremely monotonous and we are shown it repeatedly. He just stands there, pulls the lever, when his shift is up, he goes back home to be with his son, and then the same thing happens the next day. But this time, after he's called away to work, the player, and in turn the son, return to the inside of the house. Inside, the son conjures what I took to be his imaginary friend in the form of this robot to keep him company while his father is away. And then the two begin navigating together through all sorts of different puzzles and levels so that they can go and save the boy's father from his torturously monotonous existence. And then, at the very end of the game, after all of these puzzles and after the boy's father finally escapes his awful day-to-day life, the two load up in the helicopter of sorts that they built together, and you fly past all of the levels that you completed over the course of the game. It's a really cool moment and is beautiful to boot. Once they return home, the two complete their castle and the day is complete. And everything resets so you can go through the game again if you want. And that's it. Like I said, it's very short, but in my mind, that's okay with a game like this. If you spend $20 to $30 to go out to see a movie for 2 hours once every few weeks, I think it's fair to spend 10 to 15 bucks on a game like this and get the same amount of enjoyment out of it. And also work your brain by solving these puzzles while you're at it. It's not going to be for everybody, but I will say I would personally much rather play this game than go out and watch the 15th Marvel movie that they've released this summer alone. Listen, I like this game. It's not going to win any Game of the Year awards, but that's not really the point. Games like this are about relaxation, a little bit of mental gymnastics, and a quick, satisfying, feel-good story that's as fulfilling as it is adorable. And to that end, LEGO Builders Journey does a great job. But that's it from me. Like the video if you enjoyed it, subscribe so you see new videos the second that they go live, and consider becoming a channel member to see all of my big critiques a full week before they launch. And lastly, if you have a game you'd like to see me do a breakdown of in the future, just leave it in a comment below. I do read all of them, so I will see it. But that's it for me. Thank you for watching. I love you all. I'll see you in the next video.